I thought it was just an inevitable part of life. You know, debt is what you do. I was in college when we got married. I was in graduate school, so, you know, you've got the student loans, and I think we were living on the loans at the time, and then stuff just ends up on credit cards. So we started out our marriage in debt, but we didn't think that was abnormal.
Yeah.
That was just a normal thing to do.
Yeah, I think for us it was not a matter of debt. It was more of a matter of what degree of debt are we in, and what level of debt are we in. And I think that the concept of being out of debt wasn't really even a reality for us, at least for the first few years of our marriage.
Right.
And so because of that, I think we were able to justify not even trying to get out of debt. We just lived. Sometimes it was minimal debt, sometimes it was major debt, but it was always debt.
So how long have you guys been married?
10 years in February. Yeah.
Yep.
So when you look back at your, kind of your childhood, and you look at your family, your parents, or whatever, your upbringing, do you feel like you just kind of brought that sort of financial management into your marriage in a sense? Did your parents stay out of debt? What was their perception of debt and how you acquired that or didn't?
It's a good question. I wasn't really aware of my parents' financial circumstances. There were times where it seemed like they had more money, and then there were times where they had harder times as well, but it wasn't really shared with us, so it's not like they taught us specifically about debt. However, in high school, my stepmom and my father were both very good about working with me for a vehicle, and they worked with me. They bought the car, and then I had to pay them back, and so they served as kind of the bank for that, and that, I think, started teaching me some lessons about at least responsibility with money.
Yeah, I don't think I knew much about my parents' debt or lack of debt. I remember getting my first credit card in college, and my mom kind of freaking out, and how are you going to pay this back? And I bought a stereo, but I did, and I think just her caution when I told her about it was enough for me to feel like, okay, maybe I don't need to go crazy with this. So, I mean, there wasn't a lot of formal teaching, but it was more just...
That was going to be my next question, was, what kind of, even informal teaching did you have, if any, on, did you take a debt management class, a finance class in college, or did your parents teach you those things? Sounds like for the most part not necessarily like a sit down, hey, your kids.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
Nothing formal.
So you grabbed your financial management skills from around.
Yeah, just on the fly. I mean, just kind of, it was the classic set up the credit card stand in the lounge of the college and get a free T-shirt. I mean, it was literally, it's like, wow, you get a free T-shirt. And that's
Why
great.
not?
And
Why
then
not
go
have a credit
spend
card?
whatever I want. And so I think also just managing a checking account was, for me, it was a lot more convenient just to use a credit card than manage a checking account. And because I was away from my home bank, to be able to use a credit card at times is a lot easier. Plus, I didn't have any money in college, so to be able to utilize a credit card was a huge advantage, at least I thought. So.
Yeah.
So can you quantify for us where was your debt? What was the worst place that you had been in as a couple, married? What did that look like? Mortgage, credit card debt, student loans, you name it. Tell us kind of a little bit where you were.
Well, the worst place, I guess, would be, I would say, the scariest place for us from a credit card standpoint, which is not a huge dollar amount, but for us it was significant, was I think we were over around $4,000 at one point. That was, or give or take a couple $100, right around there. That was
We might have gotten up to $5,000 at some point. The student loans have been the biggest debt that we've had.
And what
besides the mortgage, mortgage is more of a natural part of.
What was the max?
I remember getting out of therapy school and I had $60,000.
Right.
And I remember after that grace period when the payments come due, I remember sitting down and crying. What did I do?
So
we got to pay this back. Yeah.
So $60,000 in some student loans.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
4 to 5, 3 to 5, whatever, in credit card vehicles.
Yeah, we did. We had we had a car payment of $300. That was our highest car payment, and we usually only had one car that was a car payment, typically. So
When you were living in Colorado, you had a mortgage?
Yeah.
we did
As
have a
you do.
mortgage.
As
Yeah.
you do today.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So what, your perception, it sounded like, of debt was that you used it. You tried not to go into it too bad,
Yeah.
but it was kind of a necessary way of life in America, if you will. Is that fair to say? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Yeah, it is.
No, that's true.
So what changed? Because I know after talking with Cory just over breakfast, having that luxury, but they don't.
Mhm.
What changed in your guys' marriage, in your life, individually? What said, this is crazy?
I think we've always tried to keep the debt to a minimum, especially once we had kids, because I wanted to try to stay home as much as possible. And so we knew, the lower the payments, the more that might be a reality for me to stay home with kids. So we've never had the idea of just going crazy with getting into debt. We've always tried to keep it, on the lower side.
Yeah, I think for us, it took us probably far too long to realize that if you make X amount a month, that doesn't mean that you should have X amount of bills that you have to pay off. And that you have to build in a cushion, and you have to build in contingency, and you have to start thinking about your future and investing. But a lot of that begins with a very systematic approach, which last February, when we saw the infomercial church about the Dave Ramsey Financial Peace University, I think we were intrigued because it looked like something that would bring a little bit more intentionality to us as far as paying off debt, or at least learning more about that. And because of that, once we started, after the first couple of weeks, we realized that this was an opportunity for us to really attack some of our debt, and it definitely exceeded our expectations as far as the results, I think.
Tell me about some of the things that you did. What did you do to attack that debt? What did you go about? Or how'd you go about it?
Before or after?
I guess
Financial
you said in
peace.
the first couple weeks of FPU, you said you heard something or saw something, read something, whatever, and then you started to be more intentional about it. Tell us about being intentional.
I think for us, we always tried to create some kind of system for paying off our debt. We were always looking at things and planning out, okay, we can have the credit card paid off by this month if we, do this, whatever. But it was so helpful to finally have a system and somebody saying, this is actually how to do it. We had kind of been flailing and grabbing and trying to create something like that for ourselves, and then all of a sudden here's this system, and it made a ton of sense.
And I also think, whereas before Financial Peace, we tried to put a little bit away for, retirement, and have some go into 401k, and then also have some money being paid off towards credit card, and then also trying to pay off a little bit extra on the car, and then also managing the student loan debt. And because of that, we were spread a little bit too thin with our finances and with our approach. And with the Financial Peace University, it told us basically to start at ground level and start with get $1,000 in savings, and then once you get $1,000 in savings, then line up all of your debt, smallest to largest, and just start paying off your smallest debts one by one, and that creates that debt snowball. Which for us, it was paying off our credit card, followed by we had a small medical. It was a dental bill, I think, that we had to pay off, and then there was the big jump into our car payment, which at the time we started Financial Peace, I think we owed $8,000 or $9,000 on it.
On the van?
On the van.
It's
It was $6,000. So it's $6,000 on the van that we had to pay off. That we were just making we were planning on 2 or 3 more years to pay that off, and so we got that paid off, and
within the time of FPU.
Right, which was just a few.
All of a sudden, it was just it pretty much was like a light went off, and it was like, okay, we can do this a whole lot quicker than what we're doing it.
Right.
And
I think the other thing is we were not giving to the church at the time, and that's always a hard question of, well, do I pay off debt, or do I continue to tithe? And Dave Ramsey talks pretty specifically about that, and the importance of being good stewards with givers, and good stewards with our money. And so interestingly, we've been able to pay off the debt, start giving again, and in more ways than just to the church, and then to be able to see that debt snowball really start rolling with the dental bill paid off, and then the car paid off, and then now paying significant amounts towards the student loan, and watching the student loan decrease significantly. That's been really encouraging for us.
What's the interest rate on your student loans?
It is 5.5, somewhere around there.
So if I'm Joe Bag of Donuts here trying to just argue with you, and I say, well, why wouldn't you just take that low interest rate? It's a pretty low interest rate,
Yeah.
actually, and just make the monthly payments for the next umpteen years. Why'd you pay off your car early? I mean, why wouldn't you just make the monthly payments? How would you answer me?
I think just to get out from under it. We don't have to worry about it anymore. It's not in our budget, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, I think it's frustrating being a slave to someone else with your money, and to not be able to have complete control of your finances. And unfortunately, we live in a society where debt it's not only commonplace, but it's expected in order to have all of the things that you want. And one of the things that's really important to note is that, and Dave Ramsey talks a lot about Murphy will show up at your door when you least expect, and Murphy has shown up several times with big, just unexpected expenses like a transmission and or surgery or various things that are major things. And through that, we've not really had to go and do. There have been times that we've had to have a little bit of debt. For the most part, we've been able to just build that into our monthly budget, and because we have excess at the end of the month from our snowball that we're paying off bigger debt, we can take a month off from paying off the bigger debt and handle a big expense like a transmission or a medical bill or something like that pretty easily. And so that is, whereas that in the past would have been very stressful for us.
And we would have just put it on a monthly payment for the next 2 years.
Right. And ironically, sometimes the best in our, in the older way that we used to look at things, our therapy for financial stress was to go spend money. It's almost medicating to go spend money for whatever reason, because and so we to be able to pay out those things with cash, it's very powerful. It's a very freeing feeling.
So we put you on stage here in 8 days. Did you know that, Jim?
What's that? I get to go up on stage. Yes.
I've already asked you.
I know.
Once, and you both did it, or was it just you?
It was just
Just me. Yeah.
Because you know how outgoing I am.
Yeah. So I guess my thought is you've got 5 minutes on a Sunday to try to communicate to somebody something that changed in you guys last February. It sounds like, or it doesn't sound like you had this loose cannon kind of mentality towards credit or credit cards or debt. It was more just kind of you just slid into it. It's American way of life, kind of is what it sounds like.
Yeah.
But so what would you say to somebody to convince them to become intentional, to find, whether it's Dave Ramsey or it's somebody else, it doesn't really matter to me. Well, how would you try to convince them to come out of that stupor, if you will, that American, hey, that's just the way things are? What would you say?
Go ahead.
I would say for us, I think that we've lived with our debt in a fairly myopic sort of way where it's just been right in front of us, and it's the whole react versus respond. Are we being reactionary with our finances, and are we just simply, we go into debt when we have to, and if we want to go buy that, let's go buy it because we want it and we need it, at least we think that we need it, or are we responding to it and saying, how does this fit within the bigger plan of where we want to be in 5 or 10 years? And I think for us, the biggest thing is just a matter of choices and making the choice. A great example is this summer everyone's getting plasma TVs, and that's a big thing right now because it's kind of the newest thing, and so of course, we would love to have a plasma TV, but instead of going out and spending $1,000 or $1,500 or $2,000 on a plasma, which that's not really within our budget right now, and it's not that we couldn't afford it, but it's not our plan to get to where we want to be financially. And so we needed another TV in our house, and so we made the decision this summer to go garage sailing, and that was our spending therapy, was to go garage sale, because you would still get the emotion of spending the money. It just, you're spending $20 a weekend instead of $2,000. And so we felt like, since everyone else is buying plasma TVs, there'd be a nice 42-inch for a garage, in a garage sale all over Liberty. And sure enough, we were able to find a really good TV for, what was it, $35?
25.
$25, and sure enough, they got a plasma TV, and they didn't have the need for that 42-inch normal TV, and so we were able to win in that situation and not go into debt for plasma, but also spend the money and have that feeling of spending the money and enjoy being completely debt free and having what we want, just not, at least not what we think is the the nicest thing with a plasma TV, but for us it served our purpose. So it was just an issue of choice.
So have you guys used a yellow pad of paper, software, budgeting? I mean, how do you budget? How do you?
He's the Excel guru.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well.
Last night he spent, was it 2 or 3 hours creating the whole 2009 Excel spreadsheet for our next year.
Yeah.
So where Dave Ramsey talks about a nerd and
He's
a free
the
spirit
nerd.
in the family.
Yeah.
Just to find
Right.
Which is funny that I'm the free spirit, because in other parts of life I'm not the free spirit. In other areas
You're
of
just
life.
less of a nerd. Is that
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm less of a nerd.
All right. So, you guys get together. Do you talk about it? You create this spreadsheet, so to speak, for a month or all year, but you're working on a monthly budget. Do you have a set time? Do you just discuss things as they come up? How do you guys talk and interact with your spending plan, your budget?
Yeah. Dave talks about having a business meeting. So we sit down, we try to have that business meeting twice a month, after every pay period, and just sit down and plan out, where's this money going? And it's the whole idea of telling our money where to go versus it's all gone and where did it go,
Spending the money before you spend it, allocating your funds to the zero on your budget and saying the money is going to go here, and for us it provides an opportunity to really communicate with each other, and so instead of finances being stressful, or to where she has her checking account and I have my checking account and we have our own bills, we're committed to working on that together because we see it as an opportunity for us to grow in our marriage. Since, there's no sense in making finances stressful if you can communicate and be on the same page. And we run our money like we would run if we were to run our own business. That's how we look at our finances. So
would you say, compared to, I'm just going to pick a time period, 3 years ago, when you weren't doing this, it sounds like, necessarily,
Right.
to this level, you weren't necessarily managing your money as much as you were just kind of letting your money manage you. I don't know how to say that.
Right.
Define, how would you describe your relationship then versus now, and just in general terms or in specifically with finances?
Like you were saying with the communication, it keeps us communicating on a fairly regular basis about where our money's going. And then Dave talks a lot about being able to relax in a place inside of you that you never knew was tense before. And I think that's true. There's just this little bit of added security, or maybe a lot of added security, that we have a plan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you feel that, Jamie?
Yeah. I do.
Because he specifically talks about women
Yes.
having that place.
Yeah.
I think men do too. It's just not quite as maybe as intense of a feeling to allow you to relax. So that's
Right.
interesting. Do you perceive that in Jamie?
I do. I think that I think it's been neat to really mature with our money, and by no means do we have a ton of money, but we feel like we know exactly where the money is going, and even though we may not have millions and millions of dollars, we feel so blessed with what we do have, and so to not be a slave to to debt allows us to be very thankful, because it's ours. It's our money, and we know where it's going, and we can make those choices to ensure that our family is as secure as possible. The other thing for us is having small children, a 6 and a 3-year-old. They're watching us, and we are, because we didn't get that formal training growing up, we have an opportunity as parents to give that to our kids, and to allow our kids to see that hopefully we are spending our money wisely, and we're teaching them how to spend money wisely. And for Christmas, we don't get them 15 different gifts. Maybe we get them few different gifts, and start teaching them that we want to be thankful for what we have. And those are all things that have, I think, been a result of making a change with our financial strategy.
Right.
I think sometimes when folks hear a story like yours, or hear anything having to do with the word budget, they kind of get this feeling. It's like, oh, it's restrictive. Are you? Come on, Cory, you got to label everything you buy. And certainly there is a certain amount of tracking, if you will. But how would you respond to someone who says, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that because it's too restrictive? How would you respond to that?
I would say, actually, we build in that free money. And so before, where we hadn't built it in, I would just go spend the money and then timidly tell him later, if it came up or if he asked, oh, by the way, I spent the money on this. But now we have it built into the budget. I know I have X amount of dollars to just go spend on whatever I want to spend it on, or whatever the family needs. And I don't need to call him and ask. And I don't need to feel scared about telling him I spent whatever amount of money on such and such later. I already have permission to spend it. And I don't have to get permission afterwards.
Yeah. Cory, you said something earlier in Proverbs 22:7 says, the rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. And it sounds like that is something that's really, I don't know about since February, but really has changed. You said a mindset of that being in debt feels like, I don't want to put words in your mouth, I don't know what you said. But the word I think of is bondage versus a freedom. And Jamie did mention like a freeing spirit now or whatever. But do you feel that way? Do you feel that way about debt now?
Not completely, because we're still in debt, but we're working towards being debt free, and we're working towards. See, this is the important thing I think that we've learned, and that's so powerful, is that our goal is to not be debt free. Our goal is to give our money away. Our goal is to be able to...
Like, it doesn't just stop at
right,
debt
it doesn't
free.
just stop at being debt free. I mean, that's kind of the midway point. That's then to be able to provide an education for our children, to have that paid for, to be able to be secure in our retirement, to be able to give money away to people who are maybe struggling with debt or just don't have the resources to survive with where they're at. That's where we want to eventually be. So being debt-free, I think that'll be a great mid-step in our process. But we want to pass that along, because ultimately that's where we feel like we're the most responsible with our money, is when we say it's not our money. We're going to give that away, and we're going to hopefully bless other people with that. But there's no way we can do that until we are out from under that. So.
And yet you talked about, I guess. So it sounds like you worked on baby step one, save $1,000 kind of thing, because Murphy's going to come knocking with a transmission or something, right?
Yeah.
And then you begin the debt snowball, and you're hammering away at the debt. From credit card debt, small as it may have been, to vehicles, to student loans, which you just defined the 3 types of debt that most folks have, other than their mortgage, obviously. But you also said something about your generosity in that. You've had, I won't necessarily say a shift, but you said your generosity has changed or has been, I don't know what the word was, enhanced or something. You said you've also been generous during this time period. So is that different than before?
It is. We've kind of gone in and out of the whole stewardship with our money as it relates to giving back. So, I think that right now we're at a point where we feel like it's just part of our monthly responsibility, and it's not a big deal. It's something that's built into our budget, and as Jamie said, like with her money that she can just go spend or money that I can go spend, it's just part of the budget, and we work around it, and we make choices to where we don't build up too much expenses that would go into that payment every month. So.
And do you guys, so you did say you used Excel, Microsoft Excel,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And so you create your own spreadsheets. So I know FPU has certain software that you can get from Dave Ramsey, but you've chosen just to put it all in Excel. Something you built or
Mhm.
something sent to you?
No, just kind of work
He
in
just
progress.
created
Just
it, yeah. I think the worksheets that he had were helpful,
Mm-hmm.
and we used them while we were in the class, and kind of gave us an idea of what kind of thing that we should have for our own, and that's you probably took some things from that
Oh, yeah.
to build the
Mhm.
worksheet. So
Mm-hmm.
And the word you used earlier was intentional. And it sounds, I mean, sometimes Dave Ramsey calls that, becoming gazelle intense,
Mm-hmm.
right,
And it certainly sounds like that's kind of what you guys have done, is just grabbed an intensity and deliberateness about your finances. Whereas in the past, it was just kind of, it was there.
Mm-hmm.
But would you say it's improved? You said it's improved your communication. Has it improved your relationship?
I think so. Because we have I think it trickles over into other parts of life, because we have a plan financially, we can have more of a plan for our family in the future. And so it's given us freedom to plan that way as well.
Mm-hmm. I think it also provides structure and accountability to us, having a plan when we really, really want to go buy an actual plasma TV, or when we really want to go on vacation or go spend that tax return money on something that's just for us, to where, I mean, we could justify our way into buying anything. We've proven that for the 9 prior years of our marriage with credit card debt and other debt, but it does provide that structure to go back to, and that accountability to say, you know what, we've got a plan. I think that we're in one of the harder points of the process with the debt snowball, because we've paid off in, well, about 11 months, we've probably paid off around $15,000 to $17,000 in debt, and which is great, but we have $29,000 more left in her student loan, and so and that's a lot of money, and thankfully we were able to hit that hard. But I think that it's because we have some spending power to pay off that student loan. We also have spending power to go do whatever we want for ourselves. So we really have to be committed to that each month, and it's not easy.
Yeah.
There are times when we don't go spend that money on the student loan, and we do go spend it on ourselves, and we justify ourselves out of it. But for the most part, we are sticking to the plan, and we are in that gazelle intense phase right now, where there are times where we just have to say, no, we want to do it. But Dave always talks about, you know, live like no one else now so you can live like no one else later, and that's really, really a great mantra that we're trying to follow.
And the thing with the gazelle intensity, we struggle with that too, because you can always be more intense. You know, can we cut the grocery budget back more? Do we have to have this much blow money, he calls it, or miscellaneous category? You know, you could scale back more and we could be more intense. So we're constantly talking about that. Should we cut this out of our budget? Should we not? I don't know.
And we even had a discussion, it was last week, where for the normal family 5 years ago compared to now, I mean, 5-10 years ago, a family didn't have DSL, they didn't have digital phone, they didn't have DVR, they didn't have cell phone bill like we do now. And if you take the average cell phone bill and you add the average cable and phone bill, that's another $200 to $300 a month that people, that's just kind of part of the expectation for their everyday lives now. And so it's no wonder why people struggle, especially when, like I said before, when they line up their income and they line up their expenses and they think that they have $15 or $20 to work with, that will do it. But the fact of the matter is that you really need to build in about 20% of just fluff in your budget to cover the unexpected, because about every 3 or 4 months something unexpected seems to happen. and then
Or sooner.
Yeah, sometimes it's every month or twice a month. But if you have that built in, then the other months that you're paying off more towards your debt, then you can recover from that much faster.
And you have an emergency fund, or
That's what,
portion of
yeah,
it.
the $1,000
That
is.
hopefully will protect you from some of those things, if not most of those things. I know sometimes, like, I know you guys experienced that where it was exceeding $1,000 on the car repair or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And the surgery.
Surgery.
Yep.
I'm going to ask just one more question, and then I want you guys to be able to say anything you want to say, if you want to say anything else. But if you were to describe, I guess, your life, you know, your financial life 3 or 4 years ago in one word, and then the same today, maybe, I don't know, 2, 3 years down the road when that $29,000 is gone, and, you know, your car payments, whether you have one or not, you know, debt is something that you have, you know, minimized in your life. Maybe it's just a mortgage. I don't know. What word would you describe your life then, now, and maybe in the future? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
Mm-hmm.
What would you say a few years ago?
Then, trying, maybe. We were trying. I think now I'd call it focused, and in that we have a plan. And in the future, hopefully the word that will describe it will be free.
Yeah, I'd say a few years ago we were probably lazy, maybe, with our finances a little bit. Like, it just wasn't a priority. I mean, it was a priority, but it wasn't the number one top priority to where we were just trying to get it paid off. So maybe apathetic would be a little bit. It's like, we'll be all right. It's just the way that we have to do this. And then now I would say, I would agree, focused. And then in the future, I would also agree that we want it to be freedom. And then also, I think I would add to that, we want to be givers. And we want to hopefully empower other people to get out of debt and to just give that money away. Because I think that will be a very fulfilling thing for us.
I lied. I got one more question then. What first step would you tell somebody who's probably got $40,000 to $60,000 of student loans? It doesn't matter. He's got some credit card debts, got 1, if not 2 car payments. I mean, you just described, or I just described, the average American family, right? What would you tell them to do? Would you encourage them to do? What step would you tell them to take?
I think they just need to talk to each other. You know, communication is the key. And the thing that got us talking was going to this class. It gave us a venue to sit down and talk about it. And that was our homework, you know. Mm-hmm. So sitting down and talking about it led us to creating a plan, which led us to being more focused, and it's just started us down a better path.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I also think that I think it's important to write down what's coming in and what's going out. I think it's really important to just understand where your money is coming from and going to. And at that point, I think you can see whether you have issues to deal with or not. And to be able to see it on paper and to take the income and subtract the expenses. And if you get a negative number, then that's bad. If you get a positive number that's small, then that's not good either. And then to just make the decision to at least look at, even if it's just reading a book and not taking an 11-week class, but just taking a few hours to read a book and asking yourself, is this where we want to be in a few years, or do we want to be free from our debt?